Hi, everybody. Welcome to Parshas Vayechi. We're ending off Sefer Bereshis. And here we are with the brothers and Yosef. Yaakov Avinu passes away in this Parsha. He is buried in Maras Machpelah. And now that Yaakov Avinu has passed on, the brothers are left alone. What happens after the father is gone? And all of a sudden, this whole history that they had between them that was so complex and so historically dramatic, now it's going to come to closure. So what happens over here? In a previous parsha, we described that Reb Asher was talking about the fact that the brothers acted out of jealousy. And at that point, I said, I personally, I agree to see your face. I personally, of course, I cannot say anything about the Shvatim, about the holy Shvatim, that they did something out of jealousy. And if we need to learn something about jealousy or about brotherly love from the Parsha, so Rabasha will teach us something that we need to learn. But it was so nice to see your faces. Thank you for coming on camera. Hi, great to see you. Wonderful to see everybody. But we mustn't take those words at face value. We have to understand that the Shiftei Kah, the 12 tribes, the children of Yaakov Avinu, they were perfect. We're taught that they're perfect. And just to illustrate how perfect they were, towards when Yaakov Avinu wanted to give a bracha to his children, and it says, "Vayikra Yaakov levanav." Yaakov called his sons, and Chazal say, "Bikesh Yaakov legalos lebanav kates hayamin." Yaakov Avinu wanted to reveal to his sons the end of the galus. How long is our suffering going to go? He wanted them to know and be ready for it. And then Nistalka Shechina, and the Shechina left him, and he did not have. Yeah, nice way of looking at it. They were perfect with their imperfections, right? Because they were also human. But we have to tread with trepidation when we're talking about the avos of the nation. And Chas v'shalom, not for me to say, or any of us to say that they acted out of jealousy. We have to understand who they were and their stature, and in order to be able to learn out from their deeds. So when the Shechina left Yaakov Avinu, he all of a sudden started, he had a fearful feeling in his heart. He said, Oy vey, I wanted to tell all of my sons this nevuah, this prophecy about what was going to be at the end of days and how long it was going to be. And then the Shechina was taken away. Maybe, Chas v'shalom, one of my sons is unworthy. And that's why the Shechina was taken away from me. And he thought, look, Avram Avinu had Yishmael, Yitzchak Avinu had Esav. Who says that there's not going to be one of my children is also not going to be worthy? And then his son said to him, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. And they all said to him, just as in your heart there is only one God, there's only the Ribono Shel Olam. So in the hearts of each one of us as well, there's only the Ribono Shel Olam. And then Yaakov Avinu answered back to them, Baruch Shem, Kavod Malchusai, Lo'ilam Vayed, may the kingdom of HaKadosh Baruch will last forever and ever. And this exclamation of oneness was the exclamation that the emunah that Yaakov Avinu had and that he had taught to his children was never going to leave them. The tzaddik from Radomsk, Rosh Shlomo HaKohen, the Tiferes Shlomo of Radomsk, said that Yaakov Avinu saw with his Ruach HaKodesh, and he saw all of the generations and what would happen with all of the generations, and he saw all of the tragedies and all of the goliyos and all of the terrible things that were going to be happening to Klal Yisrael until the coming of Mashiach. He saw it all then, and he saw the terrible things that were going to be taking place, the rivers of blood that were going to be spilled throughout all of the different generations. And he was gripped with a terrible sadness when he wanted to give this over. And that sadness, we know, is what drove away the Shekhinah. Chas v'shalom, a person, we don't want to drive away the Shekhinah, but it says that a person cannot have prophecy if they're sad. A person can only experience prophecy if they have simcha. And so he asked his sons, and he asked them, maybe it's because of something that was in their children that was going to bring about this terrible galus. Maybe it was going to be a punishment. Maybe it was going to be something because they didn't merit protection. And all of his sons answered, no, there's no pagam in our imuna. And we are going to give over that imuna to our children and our children's children, and until the end of all of the generations are going to know. And all of the nations will know. As Rashi says in the Pasuk on Ve'eschanan, that we're going to hold on to our faith and we're going to give up our lives to our faith. And this was the announcement that all of the brothers gave. And that's what brought simcha back into the heart of Yaakov Avinu for him to be able to continue. And answered, Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusai La'olam Voed. For now and forever, and all of the galus and all of the tsaras and all of the tragedies that we go through, nothing is going to take the kavod of Kadosh Baruch Hu out from the hearts of the children. And as Rashi says at the beginning of the pasuk, Hakitsaisi v'oid imach. This is a pasuk in Tehillim, Kuf Lamed Tes, verse 18. Hineni basi ato leketz hadoros. I now see all of the generations. V'aydor ze imcha b'yosecha. And I see David HaMelech said, I can look forward to all the generations, and I see that all the generations are with you. That Klal Yisrael is never going to lose the faith. They're never going to lose their emunah. Just as the sons all said to their father Yaakov Avinu, who was concerned, maybe there's some limitation in you, in my sons, that brought about these terrible galuyos. No, there was no lack of emunah. That wasn't the problem. There was nothing that brought this about. This was the gezerah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ki ad le'eis kates, until the very final days, which we hope is going to come very soon. Ne'emanim niyeh lahavtachaseinu. We will be faithful to that promise that our fathers, all of the Shvatim, gave to Yaakov Avinu, to believe in Hashem and in His Torah, and in the strength of our emunah, Be'ez Hashem, we will also get through all of these, the terrible troubles and challenges of the Chevli Mashiach, and we will, Be'ez Hashem, come to the ultimate freedom. So getting back to the topic of today, which is the forgiveness, let me just make a bracha on my tea. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakol niyeh b'dvarei. So they were perfect. The Shiftei Kol were perfect. The children of Yaakov Avinu were perfect in their faith and perfect in their behavior. So when we look back now on what happened with all of the brothers of Yosef and Yosef at Tzaddik, how then can we understand with the perspective of their being completely righteous? So what happens, first of all, is Yaakov Avinu was buried, and first of all, the brothers send the shaliach to ask Yosef forgiveness, and then they come and they actually ask him forgiveness directly themselves for all of the suffering that they caused him. So we have to look into this whole story. The brothers of Yosef, the Shiftei Kol, they were the heads of the generations of all Klal Yisrael, and they were gedolim. As Rav Asher says, we cannot fathom and we cannot explore the extent of their greatness. It's beyond us, okay? And we cannot judge their deeds the way that they appear to our eyes. We cannot say that they were jealous or acted out of hatred. That's nothing that we could say, okay? And we cannot understand their behavior in that light. And whatever they did to Yosef, it wasn't an act of taking revenge because of any kind of jealousy or hatred. That wasn't what they did. As is explained in the different Mefarshim, that before what they did with Yosef, they sat down and they convened a Beis Din, and they went through all of the halachas, and they decided that the behavior of Yosef Atzadik was actually deserving the death penalty. And then they were going to actually execute the death penalty. But then they decided that they would, rather than actually doing that, they would have Rahmanas on him, and they would change it. They would move it a little bit, because if they would sell him into slavery, it would be considered as if they'd given the death penalty. And so actually they acted out of Rahmanas, the Flimashuras Adim, even though they believed he deserved the death penalty, but they were able to fulfill the intention of the death penalty without actually having to kill him. And they sold him into slavery. And after everything finished, we know, and it was certainly known to them, certainly they had Ruach HaKodesh, certainly they knew that Be'etzem, there was a very good reason from Shemayim that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had decided that they needed to go down to Mitzrayim, that Galus Mitzrayim had to happen. And so the whole reason why Yosef went down to Mitzrayim was to prepare the land so that the rest of Klal Yisrael could come down. What exactly did he do? I don't know. I according to all of the different Parshas of what he did, but according to different Mefarshim over there, they convened a Beis Din. They looked through his behavior, and I don't recall. I think I did learn it once many years ago, but I don't recall what it was. But yes, according to some Mefarshim, they found that his behavior was severely wanting, and that he was deserving of the death penalty according to what he had done. And again, out of their mercy, they didn't kill him, but they instead sold him, and they felt that, and they understood, according to their halachic reasoning, that in that way they were yoked to the death penalty. He was married by Malchus, the brother hand is telling us. Thank you for that. Okay, he was married by Malchus, which needs the death penalty. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, so the prophecy had already been given to Avram Avinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told Avram Avinu that Yodoya Teda Kiger Yezarecha. You must know that your children are going to be strangers in a strange land. This was the bris ben Abasarim. This was the promise that was given to Avram Avinu from Hashem, of that they were going to first of all be goy, first of all be in Galus in a strange land, and then they would come out, they would come out with great wealth, spiritual wealth, actual wealth, many different opinions about what that actually means. But again, this is the prophecy, this was the promise that was given to Avram Avinu. And so I'll look back at the questions that come up. So I don't want to finish this point, and then we'll go and we'll look back over all the questions, okay? So we know that Mina Shamayim, there was a historical reason why Klal Yisrael needed to go down to Mitzrayim to fulfill the prophecy that was given to Avram Avinu. And Yosef, he himself stood and told his brothers that the entire situation that came about of having to sell him to Mitzrayim was only for the good of everybody, and that they had nothing to be sorry about. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me down to Mitzrayim to prepare the food for everybody. He understood that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had placed his journey before him, set him on the path that he needed to go. And Yosef, from his perspective, he didn't have any claim against the brothers. He didn't blame them. He said, it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me down. So then, why did the brothers ask forgiveness? This is the question. We have to understand that, in the one hand, they made a perfect accounting, and they understood that they needed to do what they did. Okay, it was absolutely according to the law of what they needed to do. And afterwards, they see that only good came from it. And even more than that, they saw that in the world history, Klal Yisrael had to go down to Mitzrayim, and so of course it was necessary that this take place. And so from this we see that they didn't do any avera at all. The beginning was not an avera, the end was not an avera, and Yosef Atzadik didn't even hold anything against them, and still they felt they wanted to ask Mechila. So again, now the question is even bigger. So what were they asking forgiveness for? Really, they did nothing wrong. He understood it was all from Hashem. What's going on here? So I'm sure many of us have been in that situation where somebody comes along and says, you know, that thing that I did to you. Well, because you did this to me first. You know, you made me do this. And it's because of you. And really, what I did wasn't even half as bad as what you did first. And they turned the entire apology actually into more of an attack. It's exactly this that Rabasha takes umbrage with. And he says here, we have to understand that when a person in some way hurts another person, does something to another person, when he comes to ask forgiveness, he doesn't come with all kinds of different cheshbonos. Don't come and say, well, you know that thing that I did. You know, there were all these different reasons why I had to do this, and I had to do this, and it was right, and that, and it was really your fault, and really, I had all these different really good reasons why I had to do this. As in the saying, if one lends his car to someone and that person gets into an accident, then it's his responsibility. Yes, it's true. We have responsibility for what we do, right? We are responsible for our actions. And still, a person could sometimes address another person. They could talk to their friend. They could say, you know, really, what I did, I had all of these reasons why I did this. And I was tired and I was miserable and I was hungry and I had a bad day. And, you know, the person comes along and they start giving an apology, but instead of giving an apology, they start with a history lesson and they start with a whole Megillah of all of their excuses. Rabosha says, don't, if you've hurt a person, don't come along and tell him that he deserved it. That's not the way you begin a apology. And don't tell him that really you intended L'Shem Shemaim and that really it wasn't so bad. That you were actually, you were just a Shem Shaliach. Because we know that it called Mad Abid Rahman Tav Abid, and if HaKadosh Baruch Hu let me do it, then I must be the Shaliach of Hashem. I know somebody, okay? I have a dear precious client who was so terribly abused by a family member. And this family member said to them, had the audacity and the just the dysfunction to say, if Hashem wouldn't have allowed me to do this, then it wouldn't have happened to you. So it must be that Hashem wanted me to do this to you. Okay, this is what Rabasha is saying. This is not right. Yes, at the end we know that Yosef Atzadik was matchstick hadin. Yosef learned more than everything else that he learned in Mitzrayim. He learned to trust the Kadosh Baruch Hu more, and he learned to go with pure emunah and Kadosh Baruch Hu, and to know that there's only Kadosh Baruch Hu. He served the time that he served in prison, in the worst kinds of conditions, and he went from one of the highest places to the lowest place, and then was raised up again, and he didn't let it go to his head, not being down and not being up. And we've been following Yosef the last couple of weeks here. But when a person comes to say, I'm sorry, I hurt you, when a person recognizes that they hurt another person, don't come with a sense of self-righteousness. Well, I did it because Hashem must have let me do it. Okay? The way that this other person actually said. Again, the person actually told me, that's what this person said. Okay? And don't say, oh, it wasn't so bad. Don't minimize what you did. If a person comes along to ask forgiveness and they minimize what they've done and they say, well, it wasn't so bad really, and because there were all these other times extenuating circumstances that mitigated, and really it wasn't that bad, and I didn't do so bad, and it didn't hurt you so much. Don't take it so seriously. Don't be so sensitive. It's because you're too sensitive, and that's why you're complaining so much about it. And don't keep going. I already said sorry once. You don't need to make a big deal about it. No, don't say those kinds of things. Here, so why did they say Mechila here? Why did they ask? Why did the brothers then come along and ask forgiveness of Yosef Atzadik? Just like the brothers of Yosef came along and they said, one second. This is how we all are supposed to behave, just as the brothers of Yosef behaved. If a person has hurt another person in some way, he shouldn't uh, slip away from his responsibility to fix up what he did. And all of those things that we mentioned before are all ways of evading responsibility, whether it's by saying that gamzula toiva, this verfrumpt kind of answers, or saying, well, really, if Hashem didn't let me, if everyone has free choice, and so the only reason why it happened is because Hashem enabled me to do it. So really, it's okay that I did it because Hashem wanted it to happen. I'm just Hashem shaliach, or it really wasn't that bad. All of these ways of minimizing it or justifying oneself. Rabasha spells them all out, and this is exactly what Yosef Atzadik, what the brothers could have done, but they didn't do. So from here we learn the righteousness of the brothers, that even though they could have said those things, they could have excused themselves, they could have used from platitudes and saying, Kakol letoiva, kol ma dabid rachman tav avid. We learn also from here that this is not how we approach someone in pain. This is not how we approach someone who we've hurt. We don't try and give them over emuna and bitachon lessons instead of saying sorry. That's not appropriate. A person, if we have hurt another person, our obligation is to take responsibility for what we've done, to be moed ala emes, take responsibility for what we've done, and ask forgiveness, because no tshuva is going to help when it comes to an avera ben adam lamakim, ben adam lachavero. Sorry, if we have hurt another person, no matter how much tshuva we do towards a Kadosh Baruch Hu, it will not clear the slate if we don't also ask mechila, if we ask appropriate, proper forgiveness from the person that we have hurt. And appropriate, proper forgiveness means not with all of that junk mixed in, not with all of that self-protection, excuses, minimizing what we did. That's not how forgiveness is done. And if somebody is giving to us those kinds of pretend professations of apology, let's just understand that's not what an apology is. No, an apology is where they own it, where they don't minimize it, where they don't give you righteous platitudes and tell you that really hakol tovah and it all worked out well in the end, so it's okay. It's not okay for someone to hurt another person. They have to take responsibility for it. And the first thing a person has to do is to be careful not to hurt somebody else in the first place. And then you won't have to come and say you're sorry. I remember one particularly toxic person in a particular family system who his daughter came to me, and she said that that her father kept on hurting her and hurting her siblings and hurting her children, and she would come to him and say, this one is hurt and this one is hurt, and she, he would say, well, what should I do? And she would say, well, maybe you could say you're sorry. So he would say, okay, I'm sorry, and he would apologize. I'm sorry, apologize. And after a while, he said to her, I'm fed up of apologizing to all these people. And she said, well, maybe if you didn't hurt, we shouldn't say this. But she thought, well, if you didn't hurt people, you wouldn't have to apologize so much. Rather than being fed up of hurting people, he was just fed up of apologizing. So some people don't ever get the message. But the point is, don't hurt people, and you won't have to apologize. We can save ourselves a lot of agmas nefesh, a lot of trouble, if we consider other people's feelings from the get-go, and just really try not to hurt other people as much as we can. And here we have the Achi Yosef, okay, the brothers of Yosef, who they understood that what they had done was right. It really was the right thing, and they understood that it was a kol tovah. They had emunah. They were the ones that stood before Yaakov Avinu and said, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. There's only one, Ribono Shel Olam, and we pledge our allegiance, us and our children, till the end of generations. They knew all of that. They knew all the divrei emunah, all of the words of faith and trust, way better than we do. And they didn't use those religious, from excuses when it was their time to come and ask forgiveness. And they didn't minimize what they had done to Yosef. They didn't say, well, it wasn't so bad. We didn't throw you into the prison. we just sold you as a slave, and really they had nice smelling things. It was really a pleasant journey you had down to Mitzrayim. They didn't cover up for themselves, which they could have done, and which so many people do when they come to apologize. And so we can learn from the brothers of Yosef how to be honest, how to face our limitations, how to go into an apology without explanations, without minimizing, but with just an honest to goodness, straightforward, I apologize for hurting you. I took responsibility for what I did, and I hurt you, and I'm sorry. And I will take the steps I need to take to never do that again, as much as I can. That is a genuine apology. And until we hear a genuine apology, we don't have to forgive. And why not? Because we may potentially be opening ourselves up to more hurt by those people. And in my machzor, in the Beis Aaron machzor, there is a commentary at the beginning of the Yom Kippur machzor, Rosh Hashanah machzor, Yom Kippur machzor, maybe both, where it says that if somebody is going to take your forgiveness as a signal that they can now do whatever they want to do again, then you'd have no obligation to forgive them. If somebody's just going to do a repeat trick on you, they gave you all the excuses, and they said, well, it really wasn't so bad, and really I had this reason, and it's because of you, and you were the one that started it, and so I'm sorry that I did it, but you shouldn't be making such a big fuss about it anyway. And you can barely hear the words of the apology mumbled in between all the other excuses that they give, and you have the sense that really they don't mean it, they just want to be let off the hook, and they're just waiting to be able to get back to their tricks. You know what? We don't have to forgive in those circumstances, because they may just go back to doing it again. And how can we tell if a person is genuine? These are the ways. And so if we want to come and get genuine forgiveness for somebody that we've hurt, this is how we do it. And Be'ez Hashem, let's take upon ourselves to try not to hurt as much as we can. Of course, there are always going to be those people that, even if we've done nothing, are going to act as if we've hurt them. And that's another whole story. That's good. There are people who it's a figment of their imagination that we're hurting them. Well, we are not responsible for other people's hallucinations. Okay, we have to live in the real world. And if another person is imagining that we're hurting them, that's not our business. And some people just need to get used to being the villain in other people's stories. And other people just like to sometimes live in their version of reality. That no amount of going down on our knees and begging forgiveness is going to help in those situations, because they need a villain in their story. So again, all of these pieces need to be probably discussed with somebody who is objective and can help us understand those different kinds of dynamics. And in the complexity of the world, the way Kadosh Baruch Hu has created it, with all of these kinds of ins and outs, the model exists in Sefer Bereshis throughout the Torah. And now, at the end of Parshas Vayechi, the end of Sefer Bereshis, the background is set. Klal Yisrael, according to the prophecy that Kadosh Baruch Hu told Avram Avinu, have gone down to Mitzrayim, and they are in Galus, as we're going to read in Parshas Shmos next week. The Galus begins to intensify, and not only does the Galus begin to intensify, but the build up towards Pesach begins as these Parshas begin as well. And from in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be celebrating Be'ez Hashem Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and from Rosh Chodesh Shvat, every 2 weeks there's a Yontif. There's Rosh Chodesh Shvat, and then there's Tu B'Shvat, and then there's Rosh Chodesh Adar, and then there's Purim, and then there's Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and then there's Pesach, Be'ez Hashem, and then there's another Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And that whole period of time, all of these Yomim Tovim building up are bringing us to the Geula, and the Parshiyos of the Galus and Geula of Mitzrayim are building up for us as well. And that's where we end Parshas Bereshis, is Yaakov Abanav Yardu v'Mitzrayim. Yosef and all of the brothers are in Mitzrayim. Yosef is telling everybody, when the time comes, save my bones. You're going to take me out. The prophecy is there. That is going to be one of the signs that Serach Bas Asher remembers when the time comes to bring Yosef out. And Be'ez Hashem, we've learned about forgiveness and how to ask it. So let's go into the chat now and see what different things you've been asking. Thank you, Yetzipar, for mentioning that he was Merba Malchus, that was very important for us to get that. Okay, let's see where's other chats here? There's a bunch of different chats here. 1 second, let's see. Okay, so in regards to tshuva, what if the person isn't around anymore? Or what if by apologizing it would hurt the victim anymore? You probably asked that before I was answering that. So in regards to tshuva, if a person has already passed on to the next world, it is appropriate and it is something that's done to gather a million of people and go to the grave and ask forgiveness. That is a procedure that is done. So a person can do that. And if by apologizing it would hurt the victim more, yeah. So if it's the kind of person that, again, that sounds like the person who's just going to be using it against us, if that's the kind of thing, then no, then we don't need to go ahead and ask forgiveness because the person is not going to be open to that kind of forgiveness. I'm guessing that that's the kind of thing that you were talking about. Yeah, does that make sense? No, something else? Okay, you want to unmute and talk about it? You want to let me know what your question is more? You want to type it more into the chat? You don't. Yeah, put it into the chat and let me have a look and see what you were talking about because I would value the chance to answer that if you'd like. Let's see, how do I get to the chat? And if anybody else has any questions you want to put into the chat, we'll do what we can do to try and respond to them. You writing into the chat? Let's see. You put it into the general chat there. Okay. No. Yes. 1 second. Are you putting into the chat? Yeah, Shirley, you want to unmute? Sure, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you
Great to
so
see
much
you.
for the amazing class. Chaya, it was beautiful. Thank you. I just have a question. You went through explaining about like if the patient has hallucinations, if there are people in our lives that they think we are the cause of all their sarot and
Yes.
I just want to ask a deeper question. You know, we know that there is a purpose to everything. Why did Hashem create people with mental illness?
Wow. Okay. First of all, Katanti, I'm so small that answering that big question, okay, certainly I cannot give a full answer, but I do have a partial answer. Okay. And the my partial answer comes from the experience of supporting women who have been impacted by abusive relationships over most of their lives. Okay. And exactly the kind of thing that you're saying, people who are sure that we are the cause of all of their trouble. And it's in fact a figment of their imagination. This is corroborated by other people in our lives who really see that's what's going on. This person is clearly dysfunctional. There's something disordered in their thinking. So Rav Mordechai Twersky said that such people, many such people, and whether we're talking about full mental illness, the person has bipolar, person has depression, or whether we're talking about a kind of personality disorder where a person, according to Mordechai Twersky, he has made choices that have taken him down a path where he no longer has free choice. They have limited their own free choice through the choices that they have made. Why does HaKadosh Baruch Hu put us in this world with so many different kinds of severe emotional limitations and dysfunctions? So, first of all, what we have to do is dispel an illusion. We have to realize that we're not in this world to become perfect angels. That's clearly not what we're created for. Because if Hashem would have wanted us to become perfect angels, he clearly wouldn't have done that, right? He wouldn't have made such horrible kinds of illnesses that really sap a person's strength and again take them out of reality, right? And abuse would not be a factor in the world. And so the answer that I find in the recovery and the post-traumatic healing that I see in the women that I have been zoicha to support for over a generation now is that post-traumatic growth, the kind of faith and trust and the kind of closest to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the kind of hollowing out of the self that takes place when a person has gone through those kinds of relationships. What is left is the nothingness of the midbar. It's like the midbar Sinai, where we had to go into the midbar to get the Torah. That when a person is hollowed out in that kind of way, the way that a person is after abuse, okay, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives that person a new kind of Torah, a new kind of awareness of the Shekhinah within themselves. They can receive the Torah on an entirely different level than they could have before. And so I think from the experience of seeing these processes in so many women, that the growth that happens afterwards and the awareness of a HaKadosh Baruch Hu inside ourselves and the awareness that we're nothing, that we really are nothing other than HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Shekhinah dwelling within us and the soul that He's given us. And so the humility that comes from that and the awareness of HaKadosh Baruch Hu that comes from that, I think is not, it cannot be achieved if we wouldn't have gone through that. And so I think since all Klal Yisrael is born in trauma, I think that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants the post-traumatic growth. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to rebound. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to live after. It's like the growth that comes after the forest fire. That's Klal Yisrael, and that's the neshamas that have gone through these things. And so the mental illness and these kinds of personality disorders exist so that they give the opportunity to the people around them to grow. Okay. Thank you for asking. Okay. Yes, Linda, you put it into the chat. Okay. Did you?
Yeah, okay, I also wanted to add to what you were saying.
Yeah.
When I broke my arm a few years ago, I realized how difficult it was for me to be on the receiving end of people's chesed.
Oh.
So even with people that are mentally ill, depending on where they're at, sometimes it could just be Down syndrome or something.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It gives us the opportunity, I think, to give chesed. So I just wanted to add that, to what you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, beautiful point. Beautiful point. Okay, so the halacha is that when it comes to lashon hara, if we've spoken lashon hara about a person, the Brisker Rav said that it would be too painful. I believe it was either Brisker Rav or the Chazon Ish. It would be too painful to tell them that we spoke lashon hara about them. If it would be too painful for us to tell them that we spoke lashon hara about them, then we should not tell them. We shouldn't ask forgiveness for having done that, and that's right, because it would be too hurtful to that other person to know about that. So in such cases, we have to ask the HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help us to gain forgiveness. But in answer to that question, if it would be too painful to the person to find out and to be told in that kind of situation, then yes, we're not allowed to ask forgiveness for that. So thank you for asking that question. I hope that answers that. Okay, anything else anybody wants to bring up or share? I love hearing what you would like to share or any other comments. Yes.
I have a chizuk to try to offer.
Yes.
It's Sarah Leah. So nice to hear you again.
Yeah, great to hear.
Beautiful. So
yeah,
give a little chizuk for someone who may be in that kind of a situation because they're truly emulating the midah of HaKadosh Baruch Hu to give and not to get in return. And it's always nice to give, and we don't, when we hear a thank you or I appreciate it, what you did. For children, for example, you give and they don't know to say thank you. That's not what their role is when they're young. You're just giving. By the same token, that midah of giving to someone, how hard it is, especially if it's met with some resistance or negativity, chas v'shalom, but to give and to know that you're truly emulating a Kadosh Baruch Hu really is a tremendous madrega to go to achieve.
That's
Just
true.
wanted to bring
100% true. That's true. Yes. And that's what the Talmud Devorah says, that our kind of unconditional giving is likening to a Kodesh Baruch Hu. And Rav Avram Twersky, in his book about abuse in the community, it's important. He says that those midos are not supposed to be with close family that you live with all the time. It's just a very important thing to understand that those midos of the Talmud Devorah of putting up with of all this kind of being negativity towards us, whilst it is certainly reflecting the midas of a Kodesh Baruch Hu and living with a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Again, Rav Avram Twersky said it's not meant to be ongoing in close family circumstances. That's not the way we're supposed to be living. So just to mention that. But thank you so much for mentioning that. And Shirley wanted to speak up again. Yeah, you want to unmute yourself again? Sure, I want to hear from you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chaya, for regarding what you said about Lashon Hara. Rabbi Akiva Tatz once said, in those conditions, like you can wait until Yom Kippur and you go to the person and you say, it's getting close to Yom Kippur. We're supposed to forgive each other for everything we have done to each other. I want to tell you, I mochel you. If you ever did something unintentionally, would you also mochel me for whatever I have done intentionally or unintentionally to hurt you?
Very neat, beautiful. Thank you for that solution. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you. So you don't have to elucidate and tell exactly what happened. You can just ask for general forgiveness. Beautiful. That's great. Yes.
Can I just say,
yes, Linda,
because I got to get off. The bell just rang while you were speaking. It's my grandson who's a lone soldier, was a lone soldier in Israel. He just came in for a visit and surprised us.
Wow. Oh, beautiful for you.
Just
beautiful.
As we were talking.
Go and enjoy.
I want to say thank you to everyone. I must get off. I want to go to him. All right.
Bye. Beautiful.
Be well.
Yeah, okay. Bye.
Thank him for all he has done for all of us. Thank your son.
Grandson. Yes, I will. Thank you.
Beautiful. Anybody else want to ask or add or share something before we finish for today? I see someone else is unmuted. They want to speak up, say something? Okay. I want to say thank you to everybody for being here. Thank you for the questions. Thank you so much, everybody. And have a wonderful week. Good Shabbos. Thanks for being on. Bye-bye.